Now that I have your attention, I'd like for you to watch this week's Absolutely Alabama. Thank you.
But first, we start things off with a boom as we revisit Boom Days in Fort Payne.
Boom Days is a one-of-a-kind festival in Alabama, actually in the region.
We've got stories to tell, so let's get started.
Boom Days is based on Fort Payne being founded, more or less, by a group of investors from New England, mostly from Boston, who came down here to do what they called then boom the town. So they came for the iron and coal industry that was going to make them very, very wealthy on Lookout Mountain. So when they came, they had the railroad system that brought them down here. They brought the materials here. They built many of the downtown buildings that are still here right now. They built an opera house. A few years later, they built the Depot Museum, which is a beautiful train station from 1891. They built the DeKalb Hotel, which was a major Victorian wooden structure that burned in 1918, beautiful. And many of these houses, Victorian homes and the buildings here downtown, are from 1889.
It used to be known as the sock capital of the world. Now Fort Payne remembers its heritage with a celebration called Boom Days.
This was really a very, out of the way, tucked away in the mountains and the valleys location that, had a pretty major Cherokee population at one time. And the people that were living here were just eking their way, trying to make a living on the land. They were Scottish and Irish primarily that had moved down here further down the mountain range from North Carolina and Virginia, and they worked their way down and got a piece of land, homesteaded, and tried to develop a living out of that. So really when the Boom Days era started, it brought a level of sophistication to the area that they had not had. Because these New Englanders, they wanted their children to be educated, so they started into having school systems and cultural events at the Opera House, and it just added a whole new level, which continues today. If you look at Fort Payne as a city, it's a very different city than anywhere else in Alabama. Birmingham had become very popular already and became a very wealthy city from investors from the north coming down, and they had all the elements to make steel in Birmingham. So it was assumed that that could happen here too, and it just didn't.
But there was another boom looming for Fort Payne.
What happened then, there were a lot of buildings left. The W.B. Davis hosiery mill, that was actually built as a hardware. And in 1909 or 10, it opened as a W.B. Davis hosiery mill, and that started to refuel the economy. When you enter the city signs, "Welcome to Fort Payne, sock capital of the world." And that was true up until about 2006, 2007. Then a lot of that industry started moving to Honduras and places like that. Now, we're getting some back because what's happened is prices are rising in South America, where some of the major retailers are very dissatisfied. You're having to pay a higher price net, and the quality, lots of quality complaints compared to the Fort Payne sock.
And no mention of the history of the area would be complete without talk of music. Dick Cooper has long documented the musical heritage of the region in pictures.
The Music Hall of Fame, I was the original curator there and went to work there in '89, helped create the bulk of the exhibits, and really went from knowing a great deal about the Muscle Shoals side of the history of Alabama music to being immersed in the overall state. The group Alabama was the country artist of the decade during the '80s. This town has people right now that are extremely talented. They're in line to be the next big deal,
And today, just as they have for the past 125 years, folks who aren't from around here, as they say, are still discovering DeKalb County.
We have a return visitation here that's best in the state. In other words, once you come here as a visitor, you will come back.
Well, Fort Payne has known its share of booms and busts, from the boom days when New Englanders came for the iron ore that was never really there, to its place as the sock capital of the world. Today it remembers its past as it looks to the future with boom days, a celebration that's absolutely Alabama.